Hi, I'm Vivian. My sister told me to just send a gift and skip her wedding, like I was a coworker, not her blood. No phone call, no explanation, just a link to a live stream and silence. But that message wasn't the beginning, it was the final proof. For years, I planned her events, paid her invoices, stood behind the camera, only to be cropped from every frame. Until I erased the guest list. Every single name. But how do you know when your own family is writing you out on purpose? And what happens when you finally write yourself out? First, the first time I read the message, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe she sent it to the wrong person. Maybe she was in a rush and meant to follow up with a call. But as I sat at my kitchen table, the screen still glowing in my hand, I knew better. My sister doesn't make mistakes like that. She makes statements. Just send your gift. No need to show up. That was it. No, hi Vivian. No, hope you're doing okay. No explanation, just that one line. It felt less like an invitation and more like a closure. A door clicking shut from the other side. Outside, the light was starting to slip away behind the neighbor's oak trees. The kitchen smelled faintly of cinnamon. I had meant to bake something earlier, but never got around to it. Now, the half-measured sugar and untouched eggs felt ridiculous sitting on the counter, like props in a life I wasn't invited to finish. I didn't reply. Not right away. I stared at the message so long I started to memorize the pixels. Every word burned into my mind like a scar I wasn't expecting, but wasn't surprised by either. This wasn't new. This wasn't even shocking. It was just louder than before. The next morning, I found the envelope wedged awkwardly between a coupon booklet and some real estate flyer. Cream-colored with rose gold lettering. The kind of thing brides pick out months in advance. I knew that because I helped her choose the samples. Before I was uninvited. It was addressed to Marie Kalin. Wrong middle name. Wrong spelling of my last name. The zip code was from an apartment I left 5 years ago. I stood there at the mailbox, fingers frozen around the paper, while a neighbor's kid screamed from across the street about losing their soccer ball. Somehow that voice felt more personal than the envelope in my hand. Back inside, I sat on the couch and opened it. The design was beautiful, minimal, elegant, cold, just like her. The RSVP card was already filled in live stream, link to follow. They didn't even give me the choice to decline. I could have called her. I could have asked what happened, what I did. But what would I be asking for, really? An apology I already knew she didn't think I deserved? A seat at a table she had no intention of setting for me? So I said nothing. I didn't forward the message to Mom. I didn't vent in the group chat. I just let the silence wrap around me like a familiar coat. Not warm, but known. Later that day, I walked past the hall closet and caught sight of the shoebox where I kept old holiday cards. One of them was from Seraphine, Christmas, maybe 6 years ago. A generic Hallmark line, and her name scribbled with a heart. No personal note, no real feeling, just her usual signature performance of closeness. I left the box closed. Instead, I found myself scrolling back through moments I hadn't thought of in a long time. The time I covered her half of the rent during her first year out of college, and she posted a thank you to the universe. The time she borrowed my car and returned it empty on a Monday morning. The time I threw her a birthday brunch and she tagged every guest in the photo except me. And still, I came back. I always did. Like the guest star who didn't realize she wasn't part of the cast anymore. By the time the sun had dipped fully behind the trees, I was sitting with a cold cup of tea and a note I'd written to myself months ago taped to the fridge. Do not make this about them. I laughed at it, no dry, humorless. What was I making it about then? Myself? Finally, I opened my planner. The flight info was still there. Austin to Santa Barbara, Friday morning. Hotel check-in, gift delivery window, all lined up with neat little checkboxes. I deleted each one. Then I opened the wedding file on my laptop. I had kept it for reference, the budget sheet, vendor contacts, sample designs. I didn't delete anything, but I moved it to a folder labeled Archived. Just seeing it disappear from my desktop gave me a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The last thing I did that night was slip the wedding invitation back into its envelope. I sealed it. Not to send, but to close. Because sometimes you don't need to yell to walk away. Sometimes you just stop showing up. I didn't cry that night. Instead, I sat on the edge of my bed, back straight, laptop open, and downloaded every document with my name on it and every file that used it without giving me credit. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just awake in a way I hadn't been in a long time. 2 days later, I flew to Santa Barbara. The ticket was already paid for, and at that point, showing up felt less like support and more like reconnaissance. I landed in the late afternoon and headed straight to the hotel. The air smelled expensive lavender and glass and money. I didn't recognize my own reflection in the polished doors. I was underdressed, not by mistake, but because no one had told me the dress code had changed. At the check-in table, the event coordinator smiled politely, tapped on her iPad, and frowned. "You're not on the main list," she said. "Try the service entrance down the side hall. There's a second check-in there." I didn't argue. I just nodded and walked. That hallway smelled like floor polish and steamed vegetables. A staff member held the door for me with a quick, "You catering?" I stepped into the ballroom through a side curtain. Chandeliers sparkled overhead. Tables gleamed with gold trim. I scanned for mine. Table 18. Far corner, behind a structural column, beside the restroom. Close enough to hear the hand dryer. I found my name misspelled again, next to a stranger's. As I pulled my chair back, a woman sitting across the table looked up and said, "Oh, I thought you were with the staff." I smiled barely. "No, just a guest," I replied, though the word felt like a costume that didn't quite fit. I glanced across the room. My cousins, who hadn't seen Seraphine in years, sat near the dance floor. Seraphine's yoga instructor was at the head table. I counted 8 people closer to the mic than me, who'd never seen her cry or fail or manipulate. The program began. Toasts, laughter, clinking glasses. Seraphine stood, beaming in white silk. "I just want to thank everyone who made this day possible," she said. "Especially my sister. For the diamond bracelet, she knows which one." Every head turned. A ripple of "oh wow" and "must be nice" passed across the tables. I didn't raise my glass. I didn't move. She never asked me if she could mention it, never warned me she'd make it a spectacle. I felt like I'd been stripped and paraded in front of people who didn't know a thing about me, except that I apparently had money to burn. The slideshow followed, a montage of photos and designs. The color palette? Mine. The table cards? My handwriting? The logo projected behind the stage? I'd sketched it 6 months ago, but every credit read "Our amazing wedding team." Rowena, seated 2 chairs over, leaned in and whispered, "They're really running with your stuff, huh?" I didn't look at her. I just said, "They always do." The evening dragged. No one came to my table unless I waved them down. I declined dessert. The chocolate souffle looked lovely, but I couldn't taste anything past the ache in my throat. I kept my smile small, polite, something a guest might wear. When it was finally over, I pushed my chair back and walked out without saying goodbye. My coat was thin in the night air, but I kept my hands in my pockets. The valet stand was buzzing with conversation and flashing ticket stubs. I gave my name. They had no record. "Do you remember who dropped off your car, miss?" I had. Of course I had. I remembered handing my keys to a teenager in a maroon vest with too much cologne. But there was no proof now, no record, no entry, just like the guest list. I waited on the curb in silence while they searched. My phone buzzed with a notification from Seraphine's wedding app. "Don't forget to tag your photos." I wanted to laugh. Instead, I stared at the screen until it dimmed and the reflection looking back at me faded. Back at the Airbnb, I slipped my shoes off without unbuckling them. Just kicked them into the corner, like I couldn't bear another second of pretending they fit the evening. My coat followed, then my necklace. Piece by piece, I shed what little armor I had brought with me. I poured a glass of wine I didn't want, left it on the counter. The room smelled faintly of lavender from the detergent the hosts used on their towels. It was the only thing soft about the night. I sat on the couch, letting the silence surround me. I didn't need noise. I had a highlight reel playing in my head, the sideways glances, the forced smiles, the way Seraphine hadn't looked at me once. Not even when she thanked me in front of everyone for the bracelet. Table 18. The bathroom door swinging open and closed beside us. The woman who asked if I was staff. The slideshow. The slideshow. A month ago, Seraphine had promised me I could say a few words on behalf of Dad. She said it so casually, I almost didn't take it seriously. But I'd written the speech. Rehearsed it in my head more times than I'd admit. When the MC called Rowena to the mic, I didn't move. Just kept chewing my salad that had long since gone soggy. Rowena smiled, fake sincere, and read some fluff about sisterhood and chosen family. It was polished, generic, and not mine. I wasn't overlooked. I was replaced. That distinction matters. After the lights dimmed and the slideshow started, I kept my expression still. I knew every color combination on the screen. I had spent hours agonizing over whether peach was too washed out for a late spring wedding. I knew the font for the menus, the layout of the name cards, even the loop timing on the final logo animation. And yet, every frame was tagged wedding team. No names, no credits, no trace of me. I leaned slightly toward Rowena, who was scrolling her phone under the table. I designed that logo, I said without looking at her. She glanced up. They're really running with your stuff, huh? They always do. I left before dessert was served. The valets had sorted out the car issue by then. Apparently, my name had been entered under service vendor Vivian Events. Not even a real company. Back at the Airbnb, I didn't change out of my dress right away. I sat down at the small desk by the window and opened my laptop. The battery was low, but it had enough juice to get through what I needed. I pulled up the shared Google Drive folder for the wedding. I had access to nearly everything. Seraphine never removed me as a collaborator, probably out of habit more than trust. I opened the logistics sheet first. My name was misspelled. Again. Maurice Calum. As if I were some distant uncle no one really knew. I clicked over to the design deck. No attribution. None of the pages even hinted I'd touched them. Then the final insult photos from that evening, already being uploaded. There was a group shot from the welcome line. My shoulder made it into the edge of the frame, cropped. Another from the balcony toast, everyone else holding a glass. My arm half visible behind a floral arrangement. That wasn't an accident. That was a language. It reminded me of a dinner years ago. Summer, backyard. I had just gotten promoted at work and brought the plaque to show Mom and Seraphine. Silly, I know, like I was back in grade school with a spelling bee ribbon. I barely got the words out before Mom asked Seraphine if she was still planning to go back to school for hair design. I had laughed then. I even made a joke about my ugly frame and how I should just leave it in the car next time. But I never brought anything to show after that. Now, staring at the screen, I understood the shape of their silence. It wasn't cold. It was precise, designed. So I started downloading. Every document I had submitted, every logo file, floral reference image, budget sheet, anything with my fingerprint on it, I copied into a folder titled, "In Case They Forget Again." Then I opened a blank note. I didn't write anything yet. Just watched the cursor blink. I wasn't ready to burn the whole thing down. Not yet. But I had finally stopped pretending I wasn't already standing outside the fire. I didn't sleep much that night. Just kept the light on, laptop open, cursor blinking over an empty file name like it might eventually suggest one. By morning, I still hadn't typed anything, but the decision was made. Quietly, firmly. The hotel lobby was already humming by the time I arrived. People wheeled in carts of florals, stacks of centerpieces, crates labeled ceremony detail fragile. I moved through it like a shadow. I still had the flower samples and printed decor specs to drop offies. I was still doing my part. Habit is hard to kill, even when dignity's on the line. I found Seraphine at the far end of the ballroom, camera crew circling her like she was on the cover of a magazine shoot. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and chose not to. I hovered near the assistant coordinator and handed off the samples. Before I could step back, the photographer looked up and asked, "Are you with media or event staff?" I smiled faintly. "Neither." He nodded, then turned away. The bridal party lined up for a group shot near the archway. They laughed. Someone adjusted Seraphine's veil. I waited for anyone to say, "Get Vivian in one," but no one did. I stepped back, into the corner, out of frame, out of expectation. Later, while refilling water at the back table, I glanced at the TikTok team's laptop. A preview reel was playing clips of the bride laughing, hugging relatives, clinking glasses with vendors. I saw myself once, mid-step, obscured by a floral column. The editor pointed at the frame and said, "Well, crop that for symmetry." I didn't say a word, but I heard the thought echo, as familiar as it was final. They've been cropping me for years, just never with software. At lunch, I overheard Seraphine and Rowena finalizing the seating layout. My name didn't come up. Neither of them looked my way. I sat down beside a cooler and sipped a flat bottle of Sprite like it was something important to do. Eventually, I approached Rowena while she was sorting name tags. "Am I still at table 18? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. She blinked, surprised it asked. "I think so." "I'm not sure. Actually, Seraphine wanted to keep things fluid." "Right. Fluid," I said. "That's one way to avoid committing to anything." She gave a tight laugh and busied her hands. It wasn't guilt, it was discomfort. Later, we found ourselves in the same hallway while waiting for Seraphine to wrap a call. The buzz of preparations softened. Just enough space for truth to slip in. Rowena cleared her throat. She hesitated. She said if you were in too many of the main shots, you'd pull focus. I didn't react. Not right away. I just let the words hang between us like wet clothes too heavy to move. Focus. That was the word she chose. Not disrupt, not distract. Pull focus. As if my mere presence bent the light away from her. "And what did you say?" I asked, voice level. Rowena looked down. I didn't know what to say. Of course she didn't. That was the role she'd signed up for: neutral ground. Comfortable silence. Convenient alliance. I didn't speak again. Just walked back to the guest prep area, retrieved my laptop bag, and left. Back at the Airbnb, I didn't cry. That part of me felt long gone. Instead, I spread out my documents on the kitchen table. Invoices, logo drafts, table layout suggestions, vendor referrals. One by one, I ran them through a watermarking app. My name, my work, my proof. I created a backup folder, labeling it cleanly, in case they forget again. I didn't call it revenge. I called it insurance. Then I opened the digital guest list, just hovered over it. Nothing more. But that night, for the first time, I stopped asking myself what I had done to deserve being left out, and started asking what they had done to earn my presence in the first place. By the time I woke up the next morning, I knew better than to expect repair. I checked my phone, not for apologies. Those were a luxury long extinct in my family, but out of habit. A forwarded message sat unread from a college friend I hadn't spoken to in over a year. The subject line read, "You're in this, right?" It was a link to a feature on a popular wedding blog. A full spread about Seraphine's DIY dream wedding, filled with pastel tones and polished phrases. She was quoted saying, "I planned every detail myself. I didn't want to burden anyone. I wanted this to reflect my vision entirely." My name was nowhere in the piece. No mention of the designs, the sourcing, the weeks I spent compiling vendor lists she never thanked me for. I didn't blink. I didn't reread it. I downloaded the article as a PDF and filed it away. Not for keepsake, just to have it saved in case anyone tried to gaslight me later. That was my reality now. Archiving proof of the erasure. Later that morning, I got dressed and walked to the venue. I held the gift bag in one hand, plain white with a simple satin ribbon. Inside was the pendant I'd commissioned, a custom redesign of Nena's brochure grandmother. I'd paid extra to have it engraved, discreetly, with a line only Seraphine would recognize. I didn't include a card. At the check-in table, the assistant coordinator barely looked up. "You can leave it here," she mumbled, motioning toward a cluster of gifts stacked in no order, no care. I placed it down and turned to leave. Nobody stopped me. No one offered a thank you. I was invisible again, but this time I let it be intentional. I didn't return to my Airbnb right away. Instead, I walked down to the garden patio near the ballroom entrance, where my mother sat alone with a cup of coffee, scrolling her phone like nothing in the world could touch her. I sat across from her. She looked up, blinked, and offered a smile like a cashier trained to say, "Have a nice day, no matter what." "You look tired," she said. "I am," I replied. I read the article. She knew what I meant. She didn't deny it. She just sighed and said, "Sweetheart, Seraphine has always been more fragile than you. You know that. She needs this, that line, that tired line, the one that's been my mother's fallback for as long as I've had memories." "When exactly do I get to need something?" I asked, not raising my voice. "When do I get to matter without pretending I don't?" She didn't answer, just took a slow sip of her drink and looked past me, toward the event tent being set up with delicate string lights and rented chairs. That was our pattern, she dismissed. I digested. But this time, I didn't sit there and let the moment dissolve. I stood up. "You've chosen her over me every time, and I let you. But don't be surprised when I stop showing up to be left out." Before she could formulate a response, I walked off. Inside the venue hallway, I caught Rowena near the programs table. She looked startled to see me, probably still reeling from the passive-aggressive brunch she had to moderate earlier. I didn't wait for pleasantries. "If my name disappears again," I said, "I'll take back everything attached to it." Her eyes widened. "Vivian, come on! You wouldn't ruin her wedding over this ego stuff." I smiled without warmth. I wouldn't ruin anything. I just stopped pretending I wasn't already erased. She didn't have a comeback. Just shifted uncomfortably and nodded like someone unsure if they were speaking to a friend or a threat. Back at the Airbnb, I powered up my laptop and opened every folder, reviewed every contract, checked every document that carried my name watermarked, dated, backed up. Then I opened the master guest list, the one Seraphine never thought to restrict access to. I didn't touch it, not yet. I simply changed one small thing, my permission level. Owner. By the time they realized I meant every word, I was long gone. Gone from the hotel. Gone from the role they kept shoving me into. I had already logged into the back-end system, and this time, I wasn't cleaning up anyone else's mess. I didn't wait for the evening's charade to begin. No sunset, no violins, no fake smiles under candlelight. I arrived while the afternoon light still slanted through the tall windows, painting the carpet in gold and shadow. The ballroom buzzed with frantic activity, staff in black uniforms wheeled carts of champagne flutes. Florists were still fiddling with blooms. Someone barked directions about the lighting rig. I kept my head steady, my eyes clear. I wore a simple navy wrap dress, chosen not for glamour, but for movement, efficiency. I could slip into any corner, pass through any door unnoticed, and apparently I did. A young man in a black vest spotted me from across the room. He didn't really look at me, just saw a woman in a plain dress and made an assumption. "Could you move that tray to the other side?" I stared at him for a breath. And then I moved it. Not out of obedience, not even out of sarcasm, but because there's something oddly liberating about letting people mislabel you. Again. Still, they only see what they think you are, and they never see you when they've already decided you're no one. I made my way to the back of the ballroom where the tech table sat, where the montage for the wedding reception was queued up and ready to run. That montage had been a labor of love. I'd snuck in a video. Short, simple. Just a few kind words from me, in case no one remembered to offer me the mic. A gentle nod to our father. No spotlight, just something meaningful. But when I checked the screen, it was gone. I felt it before I confirmed it. That slow, rising cold in your chest when something important is missing, and you already know who took it. I pulled out my phone and opened the shared folder from the planning drive. I scrolled. Nothing. No trace of the video file, not even in the trash. Then I checked the version history. Last accessed by Rowena. There it was. The casual cruelty of a perfectly composed digital paper trail. A message from her in the project chat. We had to clean things up for Flo. Flo. That shiny word they use when they're too cowardly to say you don't belong. I closed the app, walked calmly out to the bar area just beyond the reception entrance. There she was, Rowena in full command mode, flipping through her clipboard, chatting with the DJ about cue points and entrances, eyes gleaming with perfectionist pride. I didn't wait. So now I'm too messy to include? I said. She blinked. What? My video. You deleted it. She stiffened slightly, tried to keep her voice breezy. It's not personal, Vivian. It's about cohesion. No, I said evenly. It's about control. You don't get to rewrite this without consequences. If cohesion means cutting people out, don't be shocked when the thread you trimmed turns out to be holding everything together. She looked around for backup. There was none. I left her standing there. Back at the Airbnb, I peeled off the dress and washed the cold residue of the day from my face. I sat at the little wooden desk I'd used all week, the one overlooking the alley behind the building. The laptop booted up like it always did. The guest list spreadsheet popped up first, like a ghost still waiting for me to serve it. I didn't touch it, not yet. Instead, I opened everything else, every planning file, every vendor contract, every signed agreement I had coordinated, scanned receipts, permits, schedules. I created a new folder titled, For When Enough is Enough. I backed it all up, encrypted it, then copied it again to an external drive. They wanted to treat me like an extra chair in an overbooked venue? Fine, but I still held the key to every single exit. Then I opened my email client and typed one sentence. I warned you not to erase me. Now I'll show you what it feels like. I scheduled it for 7:00 right before the first bridal hair appointment and just before the ceremony's final call. I stood up, crossed the room, and opened the closet. No dress, just a pair of soft jeans, a clean blouse, comfortable walking shoes, neutral tones, clothes not for celebration but for liberation. I laid them out neatly, like armor. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and let the breath leave me all the way out. No more rehearsals, no more restraint. They'd removed me from the story. But they forgot. I was the one holding the pen. I woke up before the sun, before traffic, before even the pigeons outside the Airbnb window began their morning squabble. The kind of silence that fills a room with clarity before the day starts demanding things from you. I didn't rush for my phone. I let the stillness linger, walked barefoot to the kitchen, brewed coffee I wouldn't drink, and opened the curtains as if I owned the city. Then I opened the planner email. Subject line, Final VIP Access Schedule Wedding Day. I blinked, scrolled again. My name wasn't there. No call time, no badge, no entry credential, nothing. I opened the group chat from the rehearsal team. The itinerary was pinned at the top. Everyone had a designated role driver pickups, timing blocks, point persons. Everyone had a handler. Except me. Even the rideshare schedule had been updated. New cars, new passengers. I wasn't on any list. No one had texted. No one had asked where I'd be. It was like I had never existed. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I let out a breathless laugh, one of those hollow, tired ones. The kind of laugh you let slip when something finally confirms what you already knew, but weren't ready to admit. Still, I got dressed. Jeans, a soft, loose blouse. Nothing close to festive. Just enough to pass through the city unnoticed. I slipped a small gift bag into my hand, the only piece I hadn't delivered early. Inside, Nana's brooch, redesigned into a necklace. One of a kind, meaningful, until now. I considered keeping it, just walking away with the last piece of what I gave, but a part of me knew she wouldn't notice, or care. Not unless someone was watching. At the venue, I walked past the flower arch I had designed. The bridal coordinator barely glanced at me. "Vendor check-in?" she asked absently. I set the gift bag down. "I'll be watching from the room," I said. She didn't ask my name. Just nodded, already turning back to her clipboard. Just another worker bee. That moment crystallized something. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about refusing to be erased quietly. Not anymore. Back at the Airbnb, I opened my laptop. The live stream had started, buffering slowly. I didn't plan to watch the whole thing, just long enough to confirm the time. And then I saw her. Seraphine, framed perfectly beneath the floral lattice I had recommended 6 months ago, her gown glittering like a bridal commercial. She lifted something delicately in her Honda pendant. The pendant. My pendant. The redesign I had spent 3 weeks perfecting. She smiled at the camera. "A gift from my future mother-in-law," she said sweetly. So thoughtful. Below her name, the stream overlay read, "Gift from the Adler family." I didn't flinch, didn't gasp. Just quietly closed the tab. It wasn't about the gift. It was that she knew. She knew it wasn't theirs to give. This wasn't a mistake. This was revision. A calculated exclusion. I opened the planning folder again. Everything was still there, still unlocked. Like a manual for my own disappearance. No mention of me on the VIP list. No credits. No slide acknowledging my help. The digital seating chart archived by the planning team included third cousins I'd never met, her college roommate's new boyfriend, and the mailman who apparently loaned his truck for decor transport. Everyone but me. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was design. I opened the hidden folder I'd created 2 days earlier. I'd known this was coming, I just didn't know how far she'd go. Inside, PDFs of every signed vendor agreement, logo drafts, email threads, budget notes, invoices with my name, every submission watermarked, quiet receipts of my presence. I started drafting an email, clean, professional, just enough to remind them I held the blueprint. Subject, timeline breach, intellectual removal, notice pending. Attachments, logo.psd, layout, final.pdf, vendor, referrals, JXLSX. But I didn't send it. Instead, I opened the master guest list, the real one, the one they thought no one else had access to, and I started clicking. One by one, I erased them. Not the family, not Seraphine. I didn't touch her name. I removed the fringe, the people who smiled politely and whispered privately, the influencers, the yoga buddies, the coworkers who showed up for the wine, not the vows, the relatives who had called me jealous for stepping back. Click, click, gone, not loudly, just removed. She wanted an audience more than she wanted me? Fine. Now she'd have neither. I didn't leave to win. I left to stop losing pieces of myself. The sun hadn't even cracked the edge of the sea when I stepped out onto the quiet street. There was something sacred about being up before the world had a chance to speak. I walked toward the coast without a plan, hands in my jacket pockets, heart beating steady, not fast, not calm, just sure. Tucked inside the left pocket was an envelope, sealed the night before. Inside, a printed copy of every agreement I'd signed, every email confirming services under my name. I'd printed them in silence, hole-punched, and labeled them like I used to do in high school debate prep. At the back of the folder was a simple typed note. Funding rescinded due to erasure of contributor. See attached. I didn't feel angry, not anymore. I felt ready. On the terrace near the ballroom, I saw her, Aunt Odile. She was sipping her tea alone, cross-legged like she always sat, even when chairs weren't made for it. I hadn't seen her since she arrived, and somehow she didn't look surprised to see me. She nodded toward the seat beside her. I sat down. "They can pretend all they want," she said gently, without looking at me. "But I see you. You built this." I didn't answer. I couldn't. She reached into her coat pocket and pressed something into my palm. It was an old photom and Dad, standing at the edge of his garden. I couldn't have been more than 12. On the back, in his faded script, Let them talk. You just keep growing. I swallowed the ache, folded the photo into my wallet without a word. Back in the room, I didn't hesitate. I opened the laptop, logged into the admin dashboard of the event system, and pulled up the master guest list. Every table, every name, every assigned code and dietary note. I selected all, clicked remove, confirmed. Then I drafted the auto message. Due to breach of terms, guest access has been revoked. Please contact your event lead for clarification. I clicked activate. It pulsed once, then went still. Downstairs, the ripple began within minutes. Sabine, the planner, was the first to notice. I had left her the envelope with the documents at the registration table. I watched from the parking lot across the street as she opened it, brows knitting slowly, then fully furrowed. She looked around, lips pressed tight, then pulled out her phone. Inside the ballroom, things fell apart in quiet bursts. iPads flashed error codes. Table checklists disappeared. Guest names blinked out like lights in a storm. By the time Seraphine realized something was wrong, she was halfway through lipstick application, a camera crew waiting for their cue. I imagined her confusion, her voice rising. What do you mean the list is gone? I imagined her scanning the room, searching for someone to fix it, to blame. She wouldn't find me, because I wasn't there. By then, I had already checked out. Bags packed, keys returned. I was in the back of a car heading to Santa Ynez, an old vineyard inn I'd stayed at once years ago. No one knew the address, no one asked. I didn't check my phone. I didn't watch the ceremony unravel. But I knew in the weight of my breath, in the exhale that didn't catch halfway through my chest, in the stillness of my spine as I leaned back against the car seat. They built it on silence, and I finally made silence loud enough to tear it down. 2 days later, the morning light in Santa Ynez came in soft through the linen curtains. It touched everything gently, my notebook on the table, the ceramic cup of half-drunk tea, the leather strap of my watch resting in the shape of my wrist. I didn't rush to check my phone. When I finally did, it lit up with a stream of missed calls. Seraphine, Rowena, an unknown number, with a Los Angeles area code. I let them sit there. Instead, I walked into town and found a bakery tucked between a wine shop and an antique bookstore. I ordered something I didn't need and sat by the window, pen in hand, writing nothing in particular. Just lines that didn't need to become anything more than what they were, thoughts that belonged to me. Around mid-morning, I got a message forwarded from an old co-worker. A screenshot. Seraphine had posted on Instagram. The caption read, "Sometimes people walk away when you need them most. But love wins." The comments were turned off. No wedding photos were shared. Just a blurry image of her bouquet and the back of someone's head, maybe the planner, maybe a stand-in. The wedding blogs ran short headlines. Unforeseen vendor issues. Disrupt wedding of influencer Seraphine Adler. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't screenshot it. I didn't send it to anyone. I just sipped my coffee and turned the page in my notebook. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. This time, I answered. "Vivian!" Odil's voice came softly. "Do you feel lighter?" I thought about it. About the silence that had followed the storm. About the stillness in my body. About the absence of the ache I had carried for years and mistaken for love. "I feel clean," I said. She paused, then offered only this. "That's what the truth does. It doesn't shout. It clears." I stayed on the line for another few seconds, hearing her breathe on the other end like a tether that didn't bind, only steadied. That afternoon, I finally opened the envelope she had given me days before. Inside was the photo. Me and Dad, standing in his backyard garden, his arm draped around my shoulder, like I was the only thing that had ever grown straight in that place. On the back, his handwriting read, "You see more than anyone. One day, they'll need you to remind them what was real." I found a frame in the lobby gift shop. Nothing fancy, but solid wood. Real. I didn't frame it to dwell in the wound. I framed it because sometimes, remembering is not about staying in the pain, it's about reclaiming the version of you that never needed anyone's permission to exist. Back in the room, I logged out of the shared drive. I composed a short email to Sabine, the planner. Please remove my credentials and archive my contributions. I'm stepping away permanently. No signature, no flourish. Then I opened a blank canvas in my design software. Not for a logo, not for anyone else's wedding. Just a brand concept. Clean lines, muted tones. Something for a business idea that had been sitting in the back of my head for years, but never had space to breathe. A business that had nothing to do with being the helpful sister, the fixer, the fallback. I didn't need a launch party. I didn't need applause. I needed to know that this chapter of my life closed not with a scream, but with a decision. Because some endings don't come with closure. Some endings come with a clean line drawn in your own hand. And walking away isn't always about anger. Sometimes it's just about choosing to protect what's left of you.